Okay, so we start the lesson now, and the first thing I want to run you through is the project window on Primavera P6. Okay, so we start the lesson looking at how to create a project, which ideally I would expect that you would have done from the explanations on the website for Excel. So what I would do is I won't go back into trying to create a program in Excel. I'd start you straight from P6 and I'll run you through the functionalities within the software P6. Okay, so we start by having a look at the help desk on the P6 software itself, where it gives you an explanation of all the functionalities of the actual software. Now, in order for you to get to this actual window where it has the P6 Professional Help Desk, you would, in the P6 area, on the top ribbons, this location where the mouse runs through are called ribbons, and on these ribbons it has different functionalities or commands. To the left of the software you have all of the windows or layouts that you would like to see. Now within this location here, we call this location the spreadsheet, and we call this location the Gantt chart. To the top of the spreadsheet you have all of these as columns. Okay, so activity IDs, activity names, plan start, plan finish columns, start and finish columns. Now in order for you to control what layout you're looking at within the spreadsheet, you look towards the top. As you can see highlighted there, it has the activities, WPs and docs, risks, WBSs and projects. So what I would do ideally is to close these and show you how to open them when you come into the actual software. So I'll close all of them one by one and then show you where to open them from. It's pretty much a fundamentals video that runs you through how you get yourself started on Primavera P6. Okay, so I'll close all of those windows as well as the activity windows so we have nothing showing. Okay, so the spreadsheet is blank, we have no activities and we have no Gantt chart showing. Okay, now what I will start with is the top commands on the ribbons, and these top commands are exactly like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel. You click on the file, it shows you all of the actions that you could take: new project, open, close all, print, setup, import, export, send project, refresh data, etc. So all of these functions here, we will at some point within the tutorial lessons come through to all of these. So over here is where you create your new projects. So when you see this folder, the folder basically means a project. All right, so in the edit function up top on the ribbon, you can see the undo, modify activities, the cut, paste, very familiar functions that you would find in any Windows application. Next you have the view. Now what the view does is it gives you the options to select different layouts. It helps you show or move or configure how things appear on your screen. So what I would do is I'll start off by showing you what we call the enterprise project structure. Alright, so in order to find that, we go to the enterprise, we click down and we click on enterprise project structure. Ideally this is where you control all of the functions for all of the projects that the company actually works on or is currently delivering. Okay, so within this particular location here, you click on the enterprise project structure, and as soon as you click on that, it shows you all of the functionality to create an enterprise project structure. As you can see, it has the file systems of how all of the projects are aligned within the actual enterprise project structure. So from here you can reconfigure where you want to add an enterprise project structure in which you will file your new project that you're going to create. So when you minimize this or collapse this bar, You can see you have an EPS ID, which is called the enterprise, and the EPS name is called all initiatives. This basically means this is the bar that houses all of the projects that the company currently has that are live projects. Okay, so I'll extend this a little bit just so you can have more space. Okay, all right, so I've got a lot of stuff on the screen, that's why. So all right, so basically looking at this location here, you have product development, and under the product development we're running two projects, so product program 1, product program 2, etc. Energy, under the energies we're running tutorial projects, manufacturing projects. Under engineering and construction we have one project. So ideally, if you wanted to create a separate enterprise project structure to create a brand new project under that, we will do that. I'll show you how to do that. You just come over to the right location here where you have all of these commands, and you click on the add button. And what we want to do is we will create it. Always remember to highlight the bar when you're trying to create stuff, so it creates it as a sub of the actual top bar. Okay, so you click on add, and as soon as that's done, it's added a new EPS for us. So EPS obviously meaning enterprise project structure. So within this location here, we'll enter a new EPS code, and we'll call it we can call it SSJ underscore 001. So we've filed it under SSJ underscore 001. Okay, it's just the filing system, so you can go back and find where things are. Okay, and in this location, what type of projects will we call it? We'll call it AML projects. Okay, so anti-money laundering projects. Okay, all right, so we click on that, anti-money laundering projects, right? So we've created an enterprise project structure, and when we then go further to create our project, all we've done is just created a file for where we're going to put the new project we're going to create. So we've finished creating that now. All we do is come over to close. We close this window here. As soon as we close the window, remember I said that all the functionalities are to the left hand side, where you have the project file, you have over here, you have resources and all other buttons or icons that you can bring up, and all of these serve as the project functions. Okay, so as soon as it's loaded, I'll show you what that means. So over here you have all of these icons as functions, and over to the right you have the commands like the plus, the deletes, all of those kind of functionalities. Okay, so if you give it a bit, just let it create. It's taken a little while because we've got other programs running. So what I would do is I'll try and shut down some of the other programs. So it's a bit too many on. If you wait 1 second. Alright, so we've closed that down. I'll close this down as well. Okay, so we're back to P6 now. So up top here, as you can see, if you hover over any of the left commands, you can simply just click on the little arrow button that's pointing left if you wanted to add more buttons onto this ribbon to the left. Okay, so all you have to do to add more buttons is click that, go to add or remove, and it gives you options. Okay, so refresh data, commit changes, all of these are irrelevant for now because you won't have to use them, but the relevant icons to use will be new, open, close all, basically meaning create a new project, open your project, or close all projects. Okay, you do the same for these as well. There's the projects folder, there's the resources icon to open within the spreadsheet the resources. So what we'll do is we'll create a project first, or we'll click on projects so we can see all the projects that the company currently performs. And as we said before, the enterprise project structure literally comes up, and from here you can see all the enterprise project structure layout, and within this layout it literally just shows you project ID, project names, and the total number of activities that the enterprise project structure contains. Okay, as you can see all the bars up top. If you wanted to edit these bars or columns, you just right click. As soon as you right click, you can select from all of these options. You go to columns, you can click on columns and customize, and there what happens is this window of columns opens up. To the left, these are all the available columns that you can put within this window here, same projects layout window. Okay, to the right are the selected options. If you look at these options up top, you can see the current options that you have on view: project ID, project name, total activities, strategic priority. Okay, so if you wanted to add any other columns that you wanted to view, for instance, you just click on the available options, you come scroll down to group and sort by, and then what you do is, rather than you clicking on each of these to find what it is you're looking for, you can literally just click the available options, go to group and sort, and then click on list, and it lists all of the available options, and you just scroll down and select the appropriate column that you want to view. Okay, so you can do all of these functions. Just have a look, and obviously click on maybe the actual start. Let's use that for an example, and you click on right to add it, and it's added it in there. Okay, and you click on apply to make those changes so it can apply it straight to the screen. And as soon as we click on apply, you'd see that this actual start bar or column will appear right here. It's just taking a little while longer to load. We'll give it a second to load, and there you go, the actual start date is there, and we click OK. Alright, so this is just how you add columns to the windows here. You hover over the columns and right click. So you could hover over any of these columns and right click. It will bring up the options to select columns. Okay, so we open up the enterprise project structure. As you can see, that's enterprise there, and what we're looking for is the SSJ001. That's what we're looking for. Okay, which is what we created. Okay, so there we go, we found SSJ_001 anti-money laundering projects. So now this is the file where we're going to create our new project. You hover over this bar that you've created, and you can do it in one or two ways. You have what you call a wizard, which talks you or takes you through the process of creating a brand new project. You can either do it via these commands here. Up here you can see the plus button, it says create new, so we can click on it to show you the options, and it says create a new project. We can click cancel. I'll show you all the different ways to create a project when you're in the window for the project layout, okay, to make it easier so you know what options to go to whenever it is you want to create a brand new project. All right, okay, so as described, we can also do it from the right hand side command buttons. As soon as it loads, then I'll do that for you. Okay, so it's still loading. We'll give it a second. It's taking its time. Okay, so what it's doing is deleting the project that we clicked on to create. But we'll just go ahead and create the project this time. But the options to create projects, you have this left hand side, you have the right hand side as well, command buttons where you press plus, and to delete the project you press the X. Or, as you can see highlighted on the EPS node, these are called nodes. You right click whilst it's highlighted. Alright, okay, it's not allowing it. Okay, can you see the highlighted node for SSJ_001? Hello? Hello. Okay. Should I pause it or something? Alright then. So what we're going to do, we're just going to go straight ahead and just create a project so we can run through it as quick as possible because we spent quite a bit of time explaining that bit there. So I'll just get the mouse to come back on screen. Alright, so the mouse is back on screen, and what we'll do is we click on the plus button to create the project, and what you have, this is called the wizard. Okay, and the wizard kind of basically just runs you through how to create the project. Alright, so here it asks you select the EPS. We've already got that selected, which is the anti-money laundering project. We click on next. It asks you to put in a project ID. So you put in a unique project ID. We'll call this financial crimes underscore 002, and we'll call the name of the project the implementation of reg underscore f76. Okay, processes. Alright, so we click on next, and it asks you when do you want the project start dates to be and when do you want the project end dates to be. So this is asking you what planned start date. Let's just take a punt and say we'll start the project in May. We'll start it. Always make sure that you start your projects on Mondays, okay? So we'll say we'll start it on the 7th of May. We'll click on enter, and then you don't put anything in the must finish by column, because usually in projects you do not put a constraint. Basically, when you put a constraint, what you're doing is you're distorting the critical path, okay? So you press next, and then it asks you what responsible manager do you want to assign to this particular project. So if you click on the right hand side, you can see towards this location. If you click on it, you'll see a series of options. Now these are preset options. We can select a particular option or organizational breakdown name. We'll go for corporate, okay, because it's to do with governance. This project is a governance project. Alright, we click on add, and what you could also see as well is currently it says display up top here, current EPS or projects. So you can click on it and it will give you options to either display all or display the current project's EPS. Okay, so we'll click on all, and it gives us everything that's been preset within the company. Okay, so these are just basic configurations that you would have to do to your project initially just to create it, basically. So you click on start plus, and then we'll leave it as the enterprise. We go forward, you pick a rate. So what's the assignment rate's going to be for the resources? All right, we leave it as standard rate. Okay, we go forward, and it says congratulations, you've created a new project. So basically the wizard helps you create, delete resources, activities, tasks, etc. Okay, costs. So we click on finish, and we've created our project, and in a second you'll see the project appear under the bar here, or the node, the EPS node for FC002. Alright, as you can see, implementation of regs F76 process. Okay, so the project is created. what you have open here within the spreadsheet is the project layout. Now, what we want to do, if you remember from your lessons, when you're creating projects, you go from the EPS, which we have done, down to the projects, which we've just created, and then the next sequence of the project creation or program development would be to create your WBSs. Now, the WBSs usually will signify the phases of the proposed project that you're trying to build. All right, so what we do first is we open the actual project, you hover over it, and then you click open, because all you've done is create the project. You haven't actually opened the project. So you go to open, you open the project. We'll give it another second to open up. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and whilst it's loading up. Are you clear with everything? Have you got any questions? Okay, dokes. We'll proceed. At some point today, please computer. Ah, finally. Okie dokes. So what we have here is the activities layout window. Okay, as you can see, all you have is the project that we've created, but we've got no activities within the layout spreadsheet. So as I said with the sequence earlier on, the sequence is EPS, project, WBS, activities, which was activities represent the smallest subdivision of a project. Okay, the smallest subdivision of a project. Now, in order to understand that, I'll come to that in a second. We'll go first of all to create a WBS. So what we'll do is to the left command buttons, we hover over the blue squares, and that will tell you it's a WBS icon. You click on it and it brings you to the WBS layout spreadsheet where we will create the WBSs. And as I said before, for the project, all of these columns can be configured, and you can select or take the option of, you know, putting more columns within this bar or ribbon up here. Okay, so as I said, available lists and sort. Ideally, what you'd probably just want, which you already have, is a start dates, finish dates. You wouldn't really need anything else during the WBS creation stage. So I'll just come out of it and just show you what's next. So within any project, as we've said, obviously, you know, the initial phases of the project would be the initiation or concept and feasibility stage. So we will create, let's just say this particular project has 5 different phases, or 5 different phases within the life cycle. We'll create 5 WBSs by hovering over this location here where it says WBS name. You scroll down by right clicking, this option screen comes up. You scroll down to add, you click on add, and what it does is adds the first WBS. Now notice towards the WBS code, it has a 1 in there. All this literally signifies is the indentation of how the WBSs are going to be arranged. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward and simple. It's exactly like maybe Microsoft Excel, or if you were doing a dissertation and you're trying to indent your headers. So you have the main header, then you have the sub header, then you have a sub header, and all it does is it does that via the indentation of the 2.1. So if you see, when we create another WBS again, we hover over the main WBS in order to create another WBS that comes under 002. Okay, so you right click again and you add. Right, so you do this 5 times because we've said we've got 5 phases within our project. Okay. Okay, so we've got 4 there. So click on that, and then towards the right hand side you have all the commands. Now what we want to do, as you can see here, is, okay, we want to arrange all of these WBSs. As you can see, the indentations are the other way around, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We want it to run in sequence, so all we do is just use these arrow buttons up here to move the WBSs as required. Okay, so we move that up. We want them obviously in numerical order, and obviously ascending numerical order. So we right click and bring that up. move the 3 up. Okay, so we've got it all arranged, and you can see from the code for the indentation we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now with WBSs you can also have sub WBSs, okay, which are sub activities or sub phases of the main WBS. So you can have, for instance, in the, let's label these first, okay, so we'll label the first the concept and feasibility. Okay, all right, so, or actually we'll label this the business case. So the business case for this new project would be, say, business. Okay, since it's a policy project, you definitely have a business case as to why the project needs to be run. Okay, so the second will be concept and feasibility. Okay, the next phase will be the, or we could call it the concept and feasibility, and then we call this policy, or we could actually do stakeholder analysis. Stakeholder analysis. All right. And then the next one could be policy development. Based on these stakeholders identified, then you proceed to the phase where you do the policy development, and then verification, I'll just say verification of external market. Governance. Okay, so we'll just assume these 5 different WBSs. Okay, so this work package here is the business case. Now within the business case there could be a potential a series of other sub WBSs that would need to be added under the business case. All you do is hover over the business case, WBS, work breakdown structure, right click, scroll down to add, and then you add. Now as you can see, it's indented down. Okay, so if we just slightly click over here, you can see that the indentation says underscore 002.1, and then the sub WBS, if you scroll to the right as required, just scroll this column here to the right simply by hovering over it, and it will show the 2 lines together. That means you can drag it to the left or to the right as suited. Okay, so as you can see here, the indentation here is FC underscore 002.1.1. It's literally just like Microsoft Excel. Okay, if you understand the same concept Excel uses is what it uses here. Understand that Primavera P6, as complicated as it looks, it's as simple as it actually is. All you've got to do is just imagine yourself using Excel, but in a more complex driven environment, where it targets exactly what it is that you're thinking in your head and it implements it, but it's all based on the project requirements. Okay, so we've created a WBS, and maybe under this business case WBS we have all of the justification, policy justification. Okay, we're just creating random phases for this. So policy justification. Okay, so we'll say policy justification, and then under the business case as well, we could write a business plan, or say for instance the government wanted to create a particular organization that would govern the policy changes or the development of legislation, etc. You could say for instance now they'd have under the policy justification, before policy justification actually, let's create a WPS for the ideas development or innovation phase, where they would innovate the ideas for the policy. Okay, so innovation of policy. All right, and then the next one will be policy justification, obviously off of. Okay, so we'll call this innovation of policy, and we call, what did we say that WBS was? Justification, or we'll call it policy. All right, so within the concept and feasibility, right, we'll come up with, say for instance, how the policy ideas that we have obviously justified, they've been approved by Parliament. They now proceed to carry out maybe validations or surveys from the external environment, obviously the external financial markets. So what they would do is engage a lot of the senior management within the financial markets. Obviously, you go to the investment banks, the likes of JP Morgan, the likes of the Morgan Stanleys, the Merrill Lynches of this world, and they would engage them and basically put them through a series of surveys for corporate governance and see obviously how those companies currently perform their legislatory requirements or regulatory requirements, and how obviously best they're suited. So basically, you probably from the surveys highlight through data analysis, you pick out what companies are obviously performing and adhering better, and then you assign them a risk score. So basically, the whole of this process will be a risk based approach, because what you're looking at is the likelihood of majority of the risks that you identify from these surveys actually materializing, and then you'd either do it via the qualitative or quantitative. So if you do it via the qualitative, what you're doing is you're qualifying these companies based on the answer that they give, but then you go further by trying to assess the risks further using risk management practice in order to either develop a robust framework for managing, say for instance, obviously we're doing the anti-money laundering. You'd want to kind of develop an an AML risk framework that is a risk-based approach to how the current company that the government is trying to set up to govern or to regulate all of those legislations. Okay, so within the concept and feasibility phase, we could put in there the surveys. Okay, so governance surveys. Are you following me? Okay, is everything clear? You enjoying it? Is it straightforward? Okay, so we've got the governance surveys under the concept and feasibility. So it just generally looks at the the potential difficulty with implementing these policies, and obviously how you aim to use the policies to drive the direction in which you want to effect change. Majority of this is all geared towards change or changing the general perception of the industry. And the only way you do that is by driving policies. And by driving policies, that means that majority of the companies get to operate within the corporate governance arena by either adhering to policies from a top down, i.e., from senior management right the way down to the employees, through the different sub functions, HR, the business functions, operations, etc. Depending on what industry the actual companies are in, that would determine, and also the type of companies that they are, what type of products do they, bring to the market. Are they high risk, high reward products? What type of customers do they have? All of these different issues or different potential factors will obviously impact your decision making on the governance surveys and how the governance surveys are actually written out. Are we looking at individuals that have high exposure to political, you know, but yeah, so all of this, obviously, it's a finance project. We've got to take all of these into consideration. Look at implementation, policy development. What are the key drivers from a regulatory background? How do we want this to obviously impact the market as a whole? And what are the key performance indicators? How do we measure the change as well that's been implemented? So it's obviously looking at the processes, and from processes in project management, that you look at it from an inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs perspective. So what's all the information that's going to go into the surveys? What are the tools and techniques that we would use to synthesize the data? So basically analyze, validate, and synthesize the data, okay, using a risk-based approach to the analysis of the data, i.e. you identify the risks, you analyze it, and then you validate it, and obviously look for assign different metrics, either qualitative, quantitative, risk-based endeavors. So basically, okay, so here we've got the governance surveys, stakeholder analysis, we'll leave it at that, policy development, and verification of external governance. So what we've done is you now know how to create WBSs and also sub WBSs, and you just create them based on what the project requires. So you need to have a background or good understanding of what the phases of the project is, and then think of phases as the life cycle. Okay, so once you come out of the life cycle phase of thinking, okay, my WBSs are going to be business case, innovation policy as a sub WBS to that, and under business case is the justification, under innovation of policy is the development, obviously, of the ideas, all the brainstorming, stakeholder engagement, etc. Okay, in the initiation phases, looking at all of the individuals that have a vested interest in the actual policy development or policy innovation. All right, so we've created all of our WBSs for this particular project. The next step would then be to create activities. Now, in order to do that, we scroll over to the activities layout window within the spreadsheet, and as you can see, we have no activities yet. Look over where the project bar is. All you do is you see the plus sign. Since you've created WBS, there's nothing showing, only in the WBS windows you see that. You go to the activities, clearly there's no activities created. Click on the plus button, and what it shows you is all of the WBSs that have been created. Now, in the activities window, you get to see the main project, you get to see the WBS, and you get to see the sub activities of the project, which is the lowest activities when we do create them. Okay, so that's the process we're going to right now. So under verification of external governance, we highlight it. We can create the activities two ways. We can either hover over it and right click and go to add, or we can go to the commands, which will bring up the wizard. Okay, so we'll click on the add, right, on that particular WBS. Remember to highlight it where you want to put the actual actual activity that you're creating. All right, so we'll give it a second and let it load up the so it's done its own thing. There you see it. So activity name, usually just leave the activity IDs. It would automatically create in sequence an increment of 10 in ascending order. Okay, so just leave that and go straight to the activity name, and that is going under the verification of external governance. Okay, so the activity we can use for that is verification of external governance. We could say what would we call it? We'll just say industry, or we'll just say the initial stage, verification of external governance. First activity we'll say is the develop change management policies. We click on next, and what it says, it asks you what WBS do you want to put it in. We want it to be under the verification of external governance, which is what we highlighted initially. We leave it there. We click on next. It asks what type of tasks do you want it to be. Now, in P6 you have 6 different types of tasks. Okay, you have start milestones, finish milestones. You also have resource dependent activities. You have task dependent activities, and you have WBS summaries, as you can see. So the most important ones will be the start milestones, finish milestones. Okay, currently this develop change management policies is an actual task dependent activity, meaning that it has dependencies on other tasks. Okay, so we'll click task dependent. Majority of the activities will be task dependent, so just leave them on that for now. Okay, we'll do subsequent videos where we explain exactly how the different types of activities impact the creation and what you need to do. Okay, so we'll just click on next, and here it asks us to assign resources, but because we haven't assigned or created any resources for this project, which we can do later after the defining of the activities, we'll just click on next as well. It asks us what type of duration type is it. We'll leave it as fixed durations per unit, but you have other options as well here, but just leave it as fixed durations per unit. Click on next. It asks you what are the labor units, but because the units for labor usually come from the resource, we won't affect this, but it asks you how long is the duration for the actual activity. We'll call it 2 weeks. Okay, we click on next. So this is the long way round to creating activities, but it still helps you obviously in the initial stages of using the software to get you used to how P6 actually works. Okay, so we'll just give it a tad second to load, and as soon as it's done that, we'll move ahead. Alright, are you with me? Okay. So what you can do is just follow the video in your spare time and kind of try and do the exercise by yourself over and over again, so you get used to it. The idea with P6 is understand the basics of what it is that you're actually doing. Okay, so it's asking dependent activities. Here you can assign predecessor and successors, but we won't do that, okay, for now, because I'll show you a different way to do that, okay, which will suffice. So you click on next. It asks you more details. You just say no thanks. You click on next, and congratulations, you've created your activity. So that long-winded process of creating activities via the commands to the right is what we've just gone through. Now what I'll show you is the easier way to create activities. So we click on the business case, because that's the next work package or phase that we're looking at. So we just put in there, scroll down, right click, scroll down to add, and we just click add. And what it will do, it will create an activity straight away, as soon as it loads, that is. Okay, and that's it, it's done. Now what it does, it gives you a default date, which is 1 day. Okay, as you can see, original duration 1 day, remaining duration 1 day, right? It gives you a default. It's set to a default. Now if you wanted to change that default, all you have to do is scroll over to the top icons on the top ribbon, and you click on admin preferences. As soon as you click on admin preferences, here you can literally configure all of the different preset menu settings. Okay, so you see down there it says activity duration. Okay, you come here, and we want the default duration to be maybe 5 days. Okay, 5 days, it depends, it's just a default, but you would still change it as a what the project requires. Okay, this is just a default setting, so we click on close. All right, and that closes. All right, so any new activities we create will have a default duration of 5 days. So create new activity here. We'll call this the start milestone for this particular business case. Okay, so we'll call it a start milestone. And all the milestone basically means, or you just say start business case development. Okay, now notice that we've called this a milestone. A milestone is just basically an activity or an important date. It's not even an activity, but it's labeled as an activity type. It's an important date by which a particular task or activity or deliverable needs to have been performed by. So it's like a flag or a check stop that literally lets you know that by a certain period, a particular predecessor activity needs to have been completed. Okay, it's pretty straightforward and simple. The example is, you wake up in the morning, you have to go to work. You know you need to get up by 6:30. So if you were creating your whole process of getting up and getting to work, you would put a milestone at 6:30, which is wake up, and that will be the start milestone for your day. Okay? Do you understand that? Okay, so now we've called this a milestone, but guess what? We still have this activity and its attributes to look at. So you come and scroll down to the bottom here, and you can see this whole window here at the bottom, which you can drag up or down as suited. And what this has is all of the attributes here for all the activities. So depending on what activity you select, you can assign attributes to this activity here. Over here you can see where it says general. Okay, you have tabs. So at the general, it literally just gives you all of the information for the activity. It says task dependent activity type. We need to change this activity to a start milestone, because we have said that we put that there as a flag to start business case. Okay, so by this particular date, or when we schedule it and add the logic links or the relationships, we want this particular activity to be the flag for the start of the business case phase. Okay, so within this location here, you can see all the attributes that you can assign to the activity. Here you can see the activity type. You can toggle through and select the option of the type of activity you want to make that activity up there. Alright, so we say start milestone. Now what I would prefer is that prior to you going into the software and trying to create the program, you need to have background understanding of all of the 70 project acronyms, right? Within that, it will tell you in the previous lessons from Planner 101 on the website, it would have explained to you the 6 different types of activities. Okay, I need you to understand that so this doesn't look confusing. It's very essential that you understand the basics before you approach the software. When you understand the basics, you know exactly what it is you're doing within the software. That way you don't get confused when I'm selecting and saying this is a start milestone, this is a finish milestone, resource dependent, etc. Okay, now in order to help you do that, what we can do is go over to the help and look at what it says there. So as you can see, the help says developing projects, adding activities to a project, and on the tab for activities, it tells you, it gives you a full explanation of what the activities are. It says activities are the fundamental work elements of a project. Basically this means the activities are deliverables broken down into specific tasks. Okay, so those specific tasks will signify how the work is being done under that phase. Okay, that is all it is. So WBS, as I said, is the work breakdown structure, and by work breakdown structure it means the work is the activities. So work breakdown structure means the structure of how the work is to be performed. Okay, that is all it is. Now if you read through where it says they are the lowest level of a work breakdown structure, and as such are the smallest subdivision of a project that directly concern the project manager. So it further goes on to explain and says that although you can divide activities into steps, an activity's primary resource is typically responsible for managing and tracking the progress of an activity's steps, while the project manager is typically responsible for managing and tracking the progress of the overall activity. So when you've assigned a resource or responsible person to carry out an activity, the responsibility is on the individual or the subject matter expert who's carrying out the activity or the deliverable. The accountability is the project manager's, because he is accountable for the resource not completing the task or for completing the task. Okay, so that's in essence what they're trying to explain to you with this bit here. Now it says that you can define the following information for an activity. As I said, within the project window here, all of these locations here and these tabs, you can define different attributes to the activity. Okay, so general here, you can define the activity type, the duration type, the percent complete type, the activity calendar, primary resource, responsible manager, and WBS that you want it to fall under. Okay, you can also look at the status of the activity, which means in this window here you can see the duration of the activity. As you can see, it says 0 days. Why is it 0 days? Can you give me an explanation as to why it's 0 days, why it has no duration? Hello? Okay, so milestones usually have no durations. Okay, they have no durations because they are not an activity that's being performed. It's merely a stop check. Okay, so it just mainly is a stop check saying by this particular date we need to have either what, started an activity, or started a phase, or ended a phase. Now usually that would mean a start milestone usually will only have a start date. A finish milestone will usually only have a finish date. So when you look at start and finish, as you can see here in the finish column, you have no date, right? But if you were to create another activity now, right click and create that, and we called it a finish milestone, which we could create and put it under the policy justification. Okay, so we'll just wait for it to load up the activity. Okay, so we'll call this new activity finish business case development stages. Okay, and then what we could do is hover over the activity. You can either right click, cut the activity just like you would in Excel, come over to the end of policy justification, highlight policy justification because that's the WBS where you want to place the activity, right click it and paste it. Okay, so you can copy and paste activities into whatever WBSs you want them to go into. Okay, so policy justification, we have finish business case development stages. Okay, so start business case, finish business, but notice how the default duration here is 5 days as we have set from the admin preferences. Okay, and as you can tell, we have a start date and we have a finish date. Okay, which for a finish milestone we should only have a finish date. So what's the next step that we need to do in order to change this activity into a finish milestone? Which one of these tabs did we change the first activity? Was it general? Was it status? Was it resource? Was it predecessor, successors? Which one of them was it? Hello? Okay, so it was in the general tab. Okay, which gives you the general information about the activity. Remember I said that this window at the bottom here is where you make all of the changes, or you view the general information of the activity. You can view the status of the activity. You can view the resources. So basically what you're doing is you're configuring the activities as you make them. Okay, all the attributes of the activities. All right, so in the general tab you scroll down to activity type. Okay, and you select the options. You scroll down to finish milestone. You select finish milestone. As you can see, the moment we selected it, the start date disappeared and you only have an end date. as I said, a finish milestone is a date by which you finish an activity. Okay, so it's not an actual activity, hence why it doesn't have a duration. Understand the fundamentals of planning. If you don't understand the fundamentals, you won't know what the actual software is doing. So the basic is you need to understand those fundamentals. Hence why I said read the 70 project acronyms. Within the 70 project acronyms, you will come across stuff like the different types of activities, the 5 or 6 different types of activities, the 4 different types of relationships within between activities. All those are fundamental basics that you have to go to. If you go on the website, you will find that in the lessons that have the arrow diagram method. Okay, the arrow diagram method lessons on the website. I think it's either lesson 2 or lesson 3. I can't remember exactly, but do try and endeavor to go onto the website and go through that lesson again, and then you come back to the software and you see that it'd be a lot clearer because you understand the concept of what's happening on the back end of the software. Okay, so that's the whole essence of understanding the science behind the software, and then coming into the software, everything then is easier because you understand what it is that you're doing, and you're basically building a picture within the software. So remember, the process that you're carrying out of defining activities to build your program is basically inputs, tools, techniques, outputs. In the defining the activities, which you're doing now, if you went back to your cram sheet, it will give you a list of things that you have to do as the inputs. If you put jargons into the software, what do you expect to get as an output? Jargons out, right? So if you don't understand the concepts of what you're putting into the software, are you going to get a proper schedule that's practical with the right logic links, the right relationship statuses, the right attributes to the activities? Would you have that? The answer is no. So understand, after this lesson, tomorrow you can just go through those key things. I'll send you an email with the key things that you need to read, and as soon as you finish reading, then you come back to the software and everything will make sense. Is that okay? Okie dokes. So what we'll do is we'll end the lesson on this note, and we'll continue part 2 for the next lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was informative. I hope from the basic concept you kind of have an overview of how the fine margins of your planning science knowledge and the applications within the planning tool software now starts to put itself together. Okay, we will reconvene for part 2 of this video some other time. Look out for it. Thank you. Cheers.